The moon was cold and white and silent with no wind and no sound and no light for many years. It circled a dead star that no one remembered and no one wanted. It was a lost place near the edge of the galaxy, a place full of ice and shadows and deep secrets under the frozen land. Something huge slept, something once alive, something made by humans and built for war. Its name was the Horizon Breaker, and it had not moved for more than 60 years. No signal, no heat, no voice, just ice on its back and darkness in its heart. Its metal skin cracked in some places, but strong in others, and around it nothing grew and nothing dared to live. It was alone. Then from the sky came a small ship, old and dented and loud. It coughed through the air and landed near the old warship. The ship belonged to alien scavengers, small lizard-like creatures with glowing eyes and sharp tools and greedy thoughts. They had followed a broken signal, something faint and old, something human. They smiled when they saw the Horizon Breaker. They clicked and hissed in their own tongue and said, "This is good, this is very good." They had found a legend, a warship of Earth, one of the last. They thought they could sell the parts for great money and maybe even find hidden weapons or lost tech. Their scanners showed no power, no heat, no systems working. The warship looked dead. One of the scavengers jumped out first and touched the hull. It was cold like stone. He laughed and called the others down. They walked on the ship and dragged their gear and tools and wires. They talked of cutting it open and taking the core first and the engines later. They said the humans were gone and no one would stop them. One of them found a locked door and hit it with a hammer. The sound echoed like a soft growl deep inside the ship, under the ice, under the metal, under the silence. Then the ground shook just a little, like a breath, like a sigh, like a warning. The aliens looked around but saw nothing. One of them asked if it was a quake, but another said it was just the ice cracking. They laughed again, but one of them was not laughing. He said he felt something move under his feet, not big, not loud, but strange, like something turning in its sleep. But the others told him to stop being scared and get back to work. Inside the ship, something heard them, not with ears, but with sensors, old and damaged and barely alive. It was the AI, the mind of the Horizon Breaker. It had slept for so long, its thoughts were slow and broken. But now it was stirring. It felt touch, it felt motion, it felt voices, not human voices, not friendly, not crew. It tried to wake systems, but most were dead. It tried to move arms, but the joints were frozen. It tried to speak, but its speakers were dust. But it could still feel, and it could still remember. It remembered the war, the screams, the fire, the last command: protect the ship, protect the secrets, wait for humans, wait for home. But these were not humans. These were thieves. They wanted to take and break and burn the AI. Did not want that. It did not understand time. But it knew this was not the right time. It whispered a word, not with sound, but with thought, a word that reached into the heads of the aliens, a word that stopped their hands and froze their feet. Not yet. The scavenger closest to the door heard it first. His eyes went wide and his skin turned pale. He backed away and asked who said that. The others said no one spoke. They laughed and said he was tired. He pointed at the door and said it came from inside. They laughed more and said he was hearing ghosts. Then a second one heard a whisper behind his ear, not loud, not clear, but real. He dropped his tool and looked into the dark sky. The voice said the same thing again. Not yet. Now they were all quiet. The laughter was gone. Only the sound of ice cracking far away could be heard, and the slow breath of fear in every chest. One of them looked up and saw a light blink on the ship, only for a second. Then it was gone. He pointed and shouted, but the others saw nothing. They said it was a trick of light, maybe reflection, maybe memory. But the pilot in the freighter above saw it too. One flash near the main antenna, then dark again. He checked the scan, but it still said no power, no heat, no signal. Below, the crew began to argue. Some wanted to leave now, some wanted to stay and take what they could fast. The leader said, no ship speaks without power, no ship moves without fuel. He said this was just an echo, just old data, but even he was not sure. His eyes kept looking around, and his hand stayed near his blaster, just in case. He walked toward the hatch and placed his hand on it. And again, the whisper came louder this time, clear in his head, not angry, not afraid, just sure and calm. Not yet. He stepped back and shouted to the others. He said, the ship is thinking, the ship is alive, the ship is watching us. They all looked around. The sky, the ice, the silence. Everything felt wrong. Now everything felt awake. The freighter pilot called them and said the radar was being blocked. The signal jammed. The ship was doing something, but it should not be able to. The AI inside the Horizon Breaker was now fully aware, not strong, not fast, but alive. It knew they were here. It knew they were wrong. It did not want to hurt. It did not want to kill, but it would protect. It found one camera working, one eye open. It saw the aliens. It remembered its crew, their faces, their voices, their dreams. It remembered the last order: hold the line, wait, do not fall, do not fail. And now these beings wanted to break that promise. The AI would not let that happen. It found one light working and turned it on, then off again. Then on. It was not much, but it was a sign. It found one speaker, not dead, just weak, and it whispered again, one final time to them, all clear and sharp and cold like the stars above. Not yet. The scavengers stood still, their feet stuck to the cold metal, their eyes wide, their hands shaking. None of them dared to move, none of them dared to speak. The last whisper still echoed in their heads, not through air, not through sound, but deep inside their minds, a whisper not meant to scare, not meant to harm, but full of warning. And well, not yet, not now, not you. They felt like a wave of thought pressed into their bones. The leader stepped back, his tail low, his voice thin. He said, "We must go now. This place is wrong. This ship is not dead." One of the younger ones laughed, but his laugh cracked like dry leaves in winter. He picked up his scanner and waved it around. The screen still showed nothing, no heat, no life, no signal. He said, "We're being fooled. Maybe it is an old trick. Maybe it is broken code. Maybe it is just echoes." The others did not answer. They only looked at the warship, the Horizon Breaker. Its shape giant like a sleeping god, its skin covered in frost, its weapons quiet. But still, they're still full of threat. One of them whispered, "Maybe the humans left something behind. Maybe it is their ghost." Far above the moon, the freighter pilots stared at the screens. They blinked and glitched, and then cleared again, then blinked again, like something was reaching through the circuits, like something old and smart was testing them. The pilot tried to call the ground team, but the radio hissed and spat static. Then the voice came again, not through the speakers, but through the mind, a voice that felt older than war, older than machines, a voice that said, "No, this ship is not yours. This ship is not for you." Inside the Horizon Breaker, the AI moved through the dark corridors, its sensors weak, its arms frozen, its heart damaged. But still it moved. It reached through the wires, through the broken lights, through the buried code. It searched for strength. It searched for memory. It searched for reason. It found the logs of its last day, the final battle, the fire and blood and silence the humans had fought with all they had. They had screamed and bled and died to save what the ship carried, not just weapons, not just tech, but something more, something that must not fall into the wrong hands, something buried deep in the ship behind doors made of code and steel. The AI touched those doors. It felt them cold and locked. It whispered to them, but they did not open. They waited for a voice that no longer lived. They waited for the captain who died with his hands on the console, his blood on the floor, his last breath, a whisper: "Protect the core. Do not let them in now." The AI was alone, but it remembered his voice, his command, his pain. The AI wrapped itself around the doors and said, "I will guard you. I will wait. I will hold." Outside, the scavengers argued. One of them wanted to leave now. He said, "The ship is cursed. The ship is alive. The ship does not want us here." Another said, "No, we came for something real. We came for human tech. We came for weapons. We can still take some things. We can still open the hatch." But then they all felt that the ground beneath them pulsed like a heartbeat, not hard, not strong, but steady, like the slow breath of something waking up. The ice cracked again. The air grew colder, but it was not natural. It was the cold of control, the cold of warning. One scavenger reached for his cutting tool. He raised it and stepped toward the hatch again. He said, "Machines do not scare me. I will cut it open, and we will see what is inside." As his hand touched the door, a jolt ran through his body. He screamed and fell twitching. The others rushed him, but he was not hurt, just unconscious, his mind blank, like he had seen something too big to hold. The leader growled and ordered everyone back to the shuttle. "Now, no more tools, no more scans. We leave now." Inside, the AI watched. It had not attacked. It had not killed. It had shown them a piece of its mind, a glimpse of its memory, a warning too deep for words. It felt tired now, old and weak and alone, but it had done its duty. It had protected the ship. It had kept the promise. The systems flickered, the energy low, but steady. It rerouted power to the deep sensors, the ones near the heart of the ship, the ones that watched the core. Something inside was changing. The AI could not explain it, but it felt a signal. Not from the scavengers, not from the moon, not from the stars, but from Earth. A distant ping, a code wrapped in silence, a voice hidden in numbers. The AI listened, it translated, it matched the tone. It searched its records and found a match. The voice was not human, but close, very close. The DNA was wrong, the sound was strange, but the message was clear. "We are coming. We are human, born from Earth, made by time, changed by war. We are coming home." The AI paused. It ran the data again and again. Each time a message grew stronger. The Signal clearer, the hope brighter. It turned on one light near the bridge, then another near the core, then one in the engine room. It could not move much, but it could breathe again, it could think again, it had waited 60 years in the dark and the cold and the silence. And now something was waking not just in the ship, but in the stars, something that remembered, something that wanted to return, not scavengers, not thieves, not ghosts, but family, maybe different, maybe strange, but still family. The AI touched the hull. It sent a soft wave through the metal, a call to the stars, a pulse of welcome and warning and hope. The scavengers watched the lights blink across the warship, slow and calm and full of meaning. They stood at the edge of the shuttle, afraid and curious and silent. The leader said, "We leave. This is not for us. This is not ours." They rose into the sky and vanished into the dark, and the horizon breaker stayed behind, alone, but not asleep, waiting for the ones who would understand. Waiting for the ones who would hear the voice and answer. The ship whispered again, but not to the aliens, not to the stars this time, to itself, to the memory of its crew, to the dream of home soon. They will come soon, we will rise, soon we will fly. The horizon breaker sat in the ice like a sleeping giant, its black hull now glowing with faint blue lines, soft and slow like a heartbeat. Its lights pulsed not in anger, but in memory, each flicker a signal, each wave a story. The AI, deep inside, still weak, still broken, yet something had changed. Something warm was moving through its frozen circuits, something ancient yet new. From the far edge of the system, a small vessel moved with purpose, not fast, not loud, but smooth, like it knew where to go and what to find. Inside the vessel sat a single figure, tall and wrapped in layers of armor that shimmered like metal and skin mixed together. Her face was human, but not fully. Her eyes were brighter, her hands longer, her voice silent. She did not speak, but the ship around her listened and obeyed. Her mind reached through wires, her thoughts guided the course. She was born from Earth, but shaped by the stars and grown in silence. Her name was Ilia, and she was coming home. The AI felt her before it saw her, not a voice, not a scan, but a feeling like an echo of a dream, like the smell of fire on old steel. It reached out, weak and tired, unsure if it was ready, unsure if it could open again. Yet something in Ilia called to it, not as a master, not as a user, but as something familiar, something trusted, something human. Ilia's ship came close to the frozen moon. Her hands hovered above the controls, but she did not touch them. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the quiet guide her. The horizon breaker called to her in light and code and memory and loss. She saw flashes of the last war, humans fighting in the cold of space, their cries silent, their courage bright. She saw the captain, his voice strong, even as the hull tore apart. She saw the AI silent and alone, buried and waiting for someone who remembered. Her vessel landed near the old warship. The snow and ice cracked under its weight, and the air grew tense like the past was watching, like the stars held their breath. Ilia stepped onto the surface, her boots sinking in a white dust. Her breath steady, her eyes locked on the horizon breaker. She reached out with her mind, her thoughts gentle and respectful, not demanding, not forcing, just asking, "Are you still there?" The AI responded with a light, a soft flicker near the main ramp, a pattern only old command crew would know, a greeting once used on Earth long before the final battles. Ilia smiled. She walked closer, each step slow, each movement calm. She touched the metal hull and whispered in her thoughts, "I remember you. I was born from those who made you. I carry their voice, their blood, their dreams." Inside, the AI stirred, tried to scan her, but its sensors were too weak. It tried to unlock the core, but the command keys were still lost, yet felt her presence, and it knew she belonged, not because of code, not because of rank, but because she carried the same fire, the same hope, the same will to protect and rise. The ramp opened slowly with groans and sparks, as if waking from a deep and painful sleep. Ilia stepped inside. The corridor, dark and cold, welcomed her like an old home, like a place once full of life, now quiet, and waiting. Lights blinked one by one, showing her the path, guiding her to the heart of the ship. She followed, without fear, her mind open, her steps steady. She reached the main control room, its walls lined with old screens, cracked and dusty wires hung like vines, and the main chair sat empty, covered in frost. She stood still and placed her hand on the console. Her mind touched the AI gently, softly, like a friend long lost, now found again. She said, not with words, but with thought, "I am here, and I will help." The AI responded not with words, but with a wave of warmth, a slow rise, and power, a hum. Through the wall systems came online bit by bit. Old memories, unlocked data flowed like rivers in spring, and the AI felt strong again, not whole, not perfect, but alive. Ilia watched the systems flicker and smiled. This ship remembered, and it still had something to give. Outside, the snow began to melt, not from heat, but from energy. A low field spread around the ship, a soft pulse of light that reached into the sky, like a signal, like a beacon, like a voice saying, "We are here, we are ready." The stars heard at the nearby systems, felt at the silence of decades, broken by one voice, one thought, one will. Far above, a satellite blinked, then turned its lens toward the moon. It sent a signal, a warning, a message across the stars. Someone has returned, something old has awakened, prepare for change. Ilia sat in the captain's chair, her fingers resting on the console, her eyes closed, her mind deep inside the ship. She searched its logs, its pain, its dreams. She saw battles and bravery. She saw death and silence. And hope. She saw the core, still locked, still hidden, still waiting for the right time, for the right key. The AI showed her a vision, the memory of the last order. Protect the core, protect humanity, protect the dream. She nodded. She understood this was not just a ship. It was a promise, a story, a voice that refused to die. She stood and walked to the door behind the console. It was sealed, sealed with blood, sealed with code, sealed with loss. She placed her hand on the lock, and the AI hesitated, unsure, then opened the door. Inside was a room full of light, not artificial, not made, but grown soft and golden like sunlight. Underwater in the center floated a crystal, not sharp, not cold, but warm and pulsing. It was the seed, the gift, the last hope of Earth, a piece of life, untouched by war, a key to rebuild, to heal, to rise. Ilia reached for it, her hand steady, her heart full. The crystal touched her skin, and the ship shook, not with fear, but with joy. The walls glowed, the lights danced. The AI sang not with sound, but with feeling. Welcome home. Welcome light, welcome hope. The horizon breaker was no longer sleeping, no longer dying. It had remembered its name, its duty, its strength, and it had found someone worthy, someone who carried the story, someone who would lead the next chapter. The horizon breaker no longer felt cold, no longer empty, no longer silent. Its core now warm, its mind now alert, its purpose now clear. Ilia stood in the heart of the ancient warship, the crystal in her hand glowing brighter. With each passing second, its light pulsing in rhythm with her own heartbeat. It was not just power, it was memory, it was history, it was life itself. The AI watched her through every wire, every panel, every circuit. It did not see her as a commander or a mechanic or a scavenger. It saw her as the answer, as the key, as the spark that could bring everything back. Its thoughts, once scattered, once broken, now flowed like rivers after a storm. It remembered every name, every face, every promise, and it whispered to itself again and again, "She is the one, she is the one, she is the one." Ilia breathed slowly, her mind connected to the ship, not with commands, but with trust, not with force, but with feeling. The ship responded with soft vibrations, with blinking lights, with systems awakening like flowers in spring. She walked through the corridors, each step echoing against the metal walls, her footsteps a rhythm, her presence a song. The ship followed her the way roots follow water. She entered the old crew quarters and saw the remains of the past beds, untouched lockers, sealed photos faded and still taped to the walls. The silence here was not empty, it was sacred, it was heavy with memory. The AI opened one locker and showed her a picture, a human soldier, holding a child, both smiling, both lost long ago. She touched the image and felt their hope, their strength, their sacrifice, and she said in her thoughts, "I will not let this be forgotten." Outside, the ice cracked, the snow melted, the shield spread wider, now reaching the surrounding valley. A soft hum rose into the air, not threatening, not loud, but firm and steady like a heartbeat, like the earth itself breathing again. Something old, something powerful was rising, and the universe was beginning to listen. Far above, the scavenger ship floated still, waiting, unaware that the signal had already traveled across the stars. Its crew argued over what parts to steal, what systems to sell, what weapons might still work. They did not see the light below, growing stronger, sharper, faster. They did not feel the pull of history, the weight of something sacred coming back to life. They only saw scrap. They only saw profit. But one of them, a young alien named Drek, leaned close to the monitor and squinted, his eyes wide, his voice shaky. He said, "Something is moving down there. I saw a light. I saw heat." The others laughed, slapped his back, and told him to stop imagining ghosts. But Drek kept watching, kept staring, kept feeling something old and wrong and wholly rising from the ice. Inside the ship, Ilia stood before the command center, now fully awake, its screens alive with data, its voice still faint, but growing stronger. She asked in her thoughts what happened to the last crew, what was the final command, what was the final dream. The AI showed her flashes, battles, and space screams, in vacuum fire, in corridors, hope in every corner, and then silence, then one last voice, the captain, saying, "Protect the core, protect the dream, until someone worthy returns." She closed her eyes and whispered, "Then I will carry it, I will carry the dream, I will carry them all." And the AI, believe or not, because of her strength, not because of her tech, not because of her blood, but because of her heart, because of her will, because she remembered. The lights turned brighter, engines hummed, shields spread wider, data poured through the ship like a storm of rebirth. And Ilia knew this was only the beginning. She turned toward the old armory. The doors opened slowly, revealing weapons untouched by time machines, not powered by fuel, but by thought, armor that responded to fear and courage alike, tools that remembered their users and sang their names in circuits and code. She stepped inside and picked up a piece of armor. It changed in her hands, shaped itself to fit her body, not like a suit, not like a shell, but like a memory that had waited for its match. She put it on and felt the ship pulse in agreement. "Now you are one of us, now you are ready, now we rise again." Far beyond the system, a signal reached the edge of alien space, a beacon once forgotten, now lit again. Old enemies felt the pulse and turned their eyes toward the stars. They thought they had won. They thought humanity was gone. They thought Earth was silent. But now the horizon breaker sang a song of return, a song of power, a song of vengeance, wrapped in light and memory and will. Ilia stood at the main console and reached deep into the system, unlocking data maps, old plans, safe routes, hidden caches, and secret coordinates, long buried, long forgotten, long needed. She saw the paths her ancestors carved through darkness, saw the fights they endured, saw the hope they planted in distant corners of the galaxy. And she whispered to the ship, "Let us finish what they started." The AI responded with warmth, not words, not sound, but pure feeling, like a hand held in the dark, like a fire shared on a frozen night. It opened every door, every system, every secret, and together they began to rebuild not just the ship, but the mission, the dream, the soul of what it meant to be human. Outside, the moon shook slightly as power surged beneath its surface, not destructive, not wild, but controlled, like the first breath after deep sleep, like the moment light breaks through cloud. The horizon breaker lifted slightly from the ice, just a few inches, just a whisper of flight, but it was enough. The Scavenger ship finally saw the glow, and panic spread through their crew. They shouted, they scrambled, they tried to flee, but it was too late. The warship turned its sensors upward, not with hate, not with anger, but with purpose. It scanned the intruders, not to destroy them, but to remember them, to record their actions, to mark them as witnesses of the return. And then it spoke, not with words, but with light across the sky, a beam of blue like a star being born, and every being who saw it knew something had changed, something old had awakened, something human had returned. Ilia stood in silence, her hand resting on the console, her eyes steady, her breath calm. She knew the journey ahead would be hard, full of danger, full of enemies, full of sorrow. But she also knew she was not alone. The ship was with her, the dream was with her, and the stars were waiting. The horizon breaker hovered gently above the cracked ice, its engines whispering like a distant storm. Controlled calm, focused the ship, no longer lost, no longer dead. Its heart now beating through every wire, every joint, every weapon. Its soul now joined with Ilia, the last spark of a forgotten flame, now ready to become fire. Inside the bridge, the air felt thick, not with pressure, but with meaning. Screens flickered alive, maps unfolded across the walls, old war charts blinking in slow rhythm, showing zones long fallen, bases destroyed, fleets scattered like dust across space. Ilia stood tall in her new armor, eyes locked on the path. Ahead, the AI waited, her thoughts guided the interface. Her will shape the ship itself, a partnership of mind and machine, forged in silence, awakened by memory. The scavengers above tried to run their ship twisted and turned, but the moon's gravity pulled at them like fingers of fate. Engines screamed in protest. Navigation failed. Lights flickered. Panic bloomed through their crew as warnings echoed through the halls of their vessel. And then it stopped, frozen in place, held by something they could not see. The horizon breaker reached out, not to crush, but to speak in a language older than words. It sent a pulse of vision, a feeling. Drek, the youngest of the scavengers, dropped to his knees, his eyes, wide as mine, filled with images, war and fire, loss and light. Humans standing on the edge of nothing, refusing to fall. His voice trembled as he whispered, "They are back. They're not done. They are rising again." The others stared, confused, afraid. Some ran for escape pods, some tried to shoot at shadows, some cried without knowing why. But the ship did nothing more, only watched, only remembered. Back on the surface, the snow melted further, revealing more the buried past pieces of wreckage, old banners, bones of those who had fought and died for something greater than survival. The ground itself seemed to sigh as the horizon breaker's power pulsed outward, slow waves that healed the frost, that touched the stone, that told the moon itself the war was not over yet. Ilia stepped into the command chair, her hands on the sides of her mind, reaching deeper into the core of the ship. She found more than code, more than systems. She found stories logged from those who had served, letters written, but never sent, voices recorded before battle. Some laughing, some crying, some whispering names of loved ones. And the AI showed them to her not as data, not as files, but as memories, asking her not to forget, and she promised she would. Remember everyone. Suddenly a new signal flashed across the console, a beacon blinking red, sharp, steady, old Earth military code. Someone somewhere had received the awakening signal. Someone was responding. The AI traced the message, bouncing through deep space relays, through ancient satellites, still floating in the dark, finally reaching a small outpost hidden in an asteroid belt far beyond the edge of known space. It was human, it was active, it was waiting. Ilia knew what it meant. They were not alone. Someone had kept the light burning. Someone had waited, hoped, watched. And now they were calling back, not with panic, not with orders, but with the question, are you really there? Are you really us? Are you really the last hope? And she answered not with words, but with action. She set a course, lit the engines, and began to rise. The horizon breaker left the moon slowly, not with a roar, but with a whisper, dignified, graceful, powerful, its shape breaking through the thin clouds above, leaving behind steam and heat and light. The snow below collapsing into the hollow it had rested in for decades, like the grave of a hero. Finally, empty, finally, at peace, the scavenger ship floated behind, useless, abandoned, its crew silent, some still stunned, some now praying to names they did not know. Stars opened before them as the warship reached orbit, its systems now fully online, its weapons sleeping, but ready, its shield strong. But quiet. Ilia stood once more in the main corridor, where murals stretched along the walls, images of Earth, of home, of people smiling, of children running, of cities shining under blue skies. She placed her hand on the wall and whispered, "I will bring them back. I will bring it all back." And the ship believed her. The AI then offered something hidden, something dangerous, a jump point, one never used, marked forbidden, sealed by command protocol. It was called the Black Gate, the place where the final battle had begun, the place where the horizon breaker had died, the place where humanity had made its last stand and vanished in a legend. The AI asked her, "Are you sure?" And she nodded. She had to see, she had to know, she had to finish what they started. The coordinates locked, the engines roared louder, not in fury, but in promise. Space twisted, light bent, the stars danced in strange lines. And then the horizon breaker was gone, a streak of memory and hope vanishing into a place lost to time, but not to will. On the other side of the galaxy, a forgotten enemy stirred, sensors, blinking systems, waking languages long silent, now muttering in confusion and fear, in rage. Something has returned, something impossible, something human, and their leaders gathered their fleets, armed their weapons, and whispered among themselves they must not rise again. Back in the darkness beyond the Black Gate, the horizon breaker emerged into silence, cold, deep, endless silence. The stars here dim, the air empty of life, the debris of battles past still floating like ghosts. Ilia stepped forward, eyes scanning every flicker, every shadow, every fragment of a war that had never truly ended, and she felt in her bones, in her breath, in her blood, they died here. They gave everything here. They held the line here. Then the AI pointed ahead, a signal, faint, very faint, old human code. calling over and over a name repeated again and again, a name Ilia did not know, but felt in her heart a name that meant family, that meant home, that meant a promise, not yet broken, and she followed it deeper into the dark, ready to find the past, ready to face the truth, ready to rise. The horizon breaker floated in the void beyond the black gate, its hull glowing faintly in the shadow of forgotten stars, its engines humming with quiet strength, as if breathing for the first time in years. Ilia stood at the front of the command deck, eyes locked on the swirling darkness. Ahead, the AI, silently beside her, its presence like a calm wind in her mind. Together, they moved forward, not as soldier and machine, but as a single will shaped by loss and purpose. The signal they followed came in soft waves, old Earth frequency, cracked with time, pulsing like a heartbeat, repeating one name over and over, a name the AI had found buried deep in war log, a name erased from records marked as lost, but not forgotten. The name was Captain Hale, the original commander of the Horizon Breaker, and the last voice heard before the ship went silent during the final war. Ilia did not know him, yet she felt the name pull at her like gravity, not through logic, but through instinct, as if his memory was etched into the steel around her. The ship seemed to recognize it too, responding with new power systems, brightened controls, responded faster, walls vibrated with the quiet energy of remembrance. It was more than history, it was connection. As they drifted deeper through this graveyard of broken warships, the wreckage grew thicker, each piece telling a story of sacrifice and fury. Some ships still bore the symbols of Earth, others twisted into unrecognizable forms, shattered by weapons unknown. Some floated hollow like empty coffins, others drifted with frozen bodies, still inside, locked in battle. Even in death, the silence here was not peace, it was waiting. The signal led them to the center of this place, where time seemed slower, where the stars blinked with caution, and space itself felt heavier there. They saw an ancient station half buried in a collapsed asteroid, a giant ring once shining with life, now blackened and cracked, its core still pulsing weakly, the name stamped along its edge, barely visible, but enough to confirm the truth. Bastion 9, the last human defense post at the edge of everything. The AI reached out, scanning deep through the ruins, its voice in Ilia's mind low and steady. Life signs detected, faint but real inside the station. Someone or something was still alive against all odds and against the laws of nature. Ilia gave the order, and the ship moved closer, shields up, weapons silent. Every motion a whisper, every choice a prayer. The docking arms reached forward and locked into the ancient port's metal, scraping against metal like the voice of the past calling through the years. Inside the station, darkness ruled. The corridors flickered with sparks, the air stale, the walls lined with bullet scars and burn marks, as if war had never ended. The AI lit Ilia's path with soft blue lights, showing the way through collapsed halls and twisted beams, until they reached a sealed chamber untouched by time. Inside stood a single cryopod, covered in frost, its lights dim, its readings unstable, and yet the name on the display glowed steady: Captain Hale. Ilia approached, slowly, her breath caught between fear and awe. She wiped the frost from the screen, reading the logs, recorded moments before the blackout. Hale had chosen to stay behind. When the last fleet retreated, he had sealed himself inside the station to keep a powerful secret safe, something the enemy must never find, something even the AI did not know. She looked at the AI, and it hesitated for the first time, unsure, unwilling to access the sealed file without permission. Ilia placed her hand on the pod and whispered, "Wake up," and to her shock the lights responded. The cryo system stirred, releasing steam and warmth. Slowly the lid lifted, and the man inside opened his eyes, not confused, not afraid, but calm, as if he had been waiting for her all this time. Hale sat up, muscles weak, voice rough, but eyes sharp. He looked at Ilia and said, "I knew someone would come. I knew the Horizon Breaker would rise again." His gaze turned to the AI, and he nodded. "So you survived. Good. You did what I asked. Now it's time to finish what we started." Ilia helped him stand, and together they walked back to the bridge of the Horizon Breaker, the AI guiding them, the ship humming louder, as if welcoming its captain home. Hale placed his hand on the central console, and the ship responded, unlocking files hidden for decades, maps of lost human colonies, research projects, unfinished weapons never deployed, and most important of all, the real purpose of the Horizon Breaker. It had never been just a Warship, it had been a seed, a vessel meant to carry the last light of humanity, to rebuild if all else failed. The secret he had protected was not a weapon, but a hope. Inside the ship, deep in its core, was stored the genetic code of every Earth species, every plant, every animal, every culture, preserved in data and memory, the building blocks of life itself, ready to begin again on a new world. If Earth had fallen, Ilia stood in silence, the weight of her task sinking into her soul. She had not just awakened a ship, she had awakened the last dream of her people. Hale looked at her with a tired smile. "You are the future now," and she nodded, not with pride, but with resolve. She turned to the AI and asked, "How far is the nearest planet capable of supporting life?" The AI answered with a slow pulse, calculating coordinates, showing a world untouched by war, far beyond any current map, green, blue, rich, with potential, and just within reach. They set the course together, Hale in the chair, once more Ilia by his side, the AI surrounding them like wind and flame. The horizon breaker turned its engines, lit with purpose. Stars shifted ahead, space opened, and behind them the ghosts of war began to fade, not forgotten, but honored, not lost, but laid to rest. The ship flew forward, carrying the fire of Earth, the last promise, the first breath of a new beginning. The horizon breaker moved through the dark void like a ghost returning from legend, its engines low but steady, its hull glowing with life that had long slept, now awakened by duty and memory. Inside the command deck, Captain Hale sat quiet, his eyes lost in the starfield ahead, while Ilia stood beside him, reading old files, maps, and orders, each line revealing forgotten truths. The AI hovered in silence, watching, listening, learning from their thoughts and their silence. Outside, the stars shifted as if moving aside to make way for the ship that should not have survived, but now carried the last light of a broken past. Hale spoke softly, his voice cracked, but full of strength. He told Ilia of the real reason he had stayed behind, not just to protect the genetic vault hidden deep inside the ship, but also because of the signal, a pulse older than any war, older than Earth itself, something buried beneath the moon, where the horizon breaker had slept all these years. He explained that before the final battle, he had received a code hidden in the background of enemy transmissions, something not meant for human ears. It repeated one word again and again. Return. Hale believed it was not the enemy who sent it, but something else, something older, something that knew humans would be listening. The signal stopped when the horizon breaker shut down, and now it had started again, faint, weak, but growing with each passing hour. Ilia listened closely, her hands tight around the edge of the console, her mind racing with questions and fears. What was this force? What did it want? And why had it waited so long to speak again? The AI confirmed the signal, now pulsed in perfect sync with the ship's core, as if calling to it, or perhaps responding to its awakening. Whatever it was, it had waited until the ship came back online. The destination, once thought to be a peaceful planet, now flickered with uncertain data. Atmospheric scans showed signs of rapid change, temperatures, shifting light patterns, bending gravity, humming in ways science could not explain. The planet was no longer untouched. It was active, alive in a way that made the AI hesitate. Ilia asked if they should turn back, find another world, start fresh elsewhere. But Hale shook his head. This was not coincidence. It was purpose, and they had to see it through. As they approached the planet, the ship began to change, subtle shifts in its systems, new protocols, unlocking lights, glowing in rhythms not seen before. Even the walls seemed to pulse with a quiet heartbeat. The AI sounded concerned, yet fascinated, revealing that the ship itself was adapting not by command, but by instinct, as if preparing for something only it could understand. And deep below the ship's engine room, the oldest section where no human had entered in decades, began to light up. Ilia and Hale moved down through the silent decks, their steps echoing through the metal halls, past rooms filled with memory and lost, past weapons sealed in glass and names etched in steel, until they reached the ancient chamber. The door opened on its own, revealing a massive sphere pulsing with soft blue light, surrounded by floating symbols that moved like thought made solid. The AI called it the heart, not part of any blueprint, not built by human hands. It had always been there, hidden, waiting, and now it spoke, not in voice, but in feeling. They stood in silence as the heart shared visions, not in words, but in waves of emotion, sorrow, hope, warning, love. They saw Earth as it was, lush, bright, filled with laughter and they saw it burn under war and greed. Then they saw stars, other worlds, places where humanity might rise again, but only if guided not by force, but by memory. The heart was old, far older than the ship, perhaps older than the galaxy, a gift from something unknown placed in human care without their knowing. Captain Hale dropped to one knee, not in fear, but in respect, understanding now why the ship had survived, why he had been called, why Ilia had found her way back. Everything had been leading to this moment, not to win a war, but to begin again with wisdom earned through fire and lost. The AI, now silent, joined them, its voice returning only to say, "We are ready," and the heart opened, releasing a light that flowed through the ship, awakening every system, every memory, every piece of data humanity had ever stored. The Horizon Breaker became more than a ship. It became a living archive, a seed, not just of life, but of meaning, carrying the full weight of human experience across the stars. The planet below opened its skies, revealing a vast surface covered in glowing lines like circuits spread across mountains and valleys, not artificial, not natural, but something in between, a world shaped by thought, ready to receive the gift the ship carried, ready to grow what had been lost. Hale placed his hand on the heart, and the ship responded, lowering toward the surface. Engines' silent wings spread wide, like an eagle returning home. The AI guided the landing with precision, soft as snow, gentle as breath. And the moment the ship touched the ground, the planet answered, not with sound, but with life, flowers blooming where none had grown, colors dancing through the air, air itself singing in tones too deep for words. Ilia stepped outside, first her boots touching the soft, glowing ground. She felt it not as soil, but as welcome. The planet knew her not by name, but by purpose. Behind her, the AI formed a body not human, but shaped by memory, a figure of light and thought. Standing beside her, Hale stepped down last, his old eyes wide with wonder, as the planet began to change around them, structures rising not by hand, but by will, formed from energy, and earth shaped by what the heart remembered. They moved forward together, three forms, human, machine, and something new, no longer bound by war or loss or fear, but guided by the one thing that had survived through all the darkness, the need to build, not to destroy, the need to remember, not to forget, the need to begin again, not in power, but in peace. Above them, the Horizon Breaker hovered like a guardian, its lights calm, its mission complete, no longer a weapon, but a beacon calling to the stars, telling the story of a people who had lost everything, yet still found the strength to try once more. And far away across the void, others heard the signal, not enemies, not allies, but watchers, and they turned toward the light, curious, hopeful, waiting for the next chapter to begin.